Welcome, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, and have joined us today from wherever you are, and welcome to CollabTalk. My name is Lyman. I'm the producer here at IT Unity for CollabTalk. We thank you for taking some time today in your busy schedules to join us for a little fun information and opinions. On today's episode of CollabTalk, our panel of experts will discuss the migration versus hybrid search, the new features of SharePoint 2016, changes in the dev model, and much, much more. So to get things started, please welcome your panelists, Naomi Moneypenny, Mark Anderson, Christian Buckley, and Jason Himmelstein. Sorry, just like the Stein. Take it away, folks. Let me get you going here.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Christian.
Hello. I hear your voice, Jason. I don't see your face yet, but yeah, good morning, everybody.
All the better for all of our people watching at home.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning. Hey, so we're excited to be here. So let's get started. So we've had some really exciting announcements in the last week or so in terms of the SharePoint 2016 and the future of SharePoint. You may have watched the live webcast, and some of us were privileged enough to be at the event also in San Francisco. What we wanted to do with this panel was to really recap a few things that we thought were particularly great feature announcements, but also to talk about maybe a little bit of the reflection after all of the conversation and seeing all of the new functionality that's present. So I wanted to introduce myself very briefly. My name is Naomi Moneypenny. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at ManyWorlds. We specialize in expertise recommendation systems and machine learning. And I will pass it to Christian Buckley to introduce himself.
And my name is Christian Buckley. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with BZ, and we are an enterprise collaboration solution built on top of SharePoint and Office 365 that extends the social collaboration capabilities of SharePoint. And Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Christian. I'm Mark Anderson. I am with Simpraxis Consulting in Boston, Massachusetts. We're a professional services firm. We offer a lot of consulting around SharePoint, Office 365, and Azure. And Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, I am Ben Nylan, and I am...
He's the worst French accent ever, sorry.
I've been practicing, because my real French accent is really good. I had to come up with a really bad one. So, hi everyone, I'm Jason Himmelstein. This is Sean Connery, and we're coming to you live from the Rackspace UK office. I'm the Office 365 Advisory Services Manager here at Rackspace, and yeah.
So the question is, if you had never mentioned your name, if people just think you're Ben, would we just have kind of moved forward? Because with the beard, I mean, you all just look the same, right?
We do have an air of excellence about us, all men with beards. So yes, that is a fact thing.
Yeah.
It's an aura thing.
The aura.
Yeah, it's the aura from the beard. So, beard auras. All right.
Beard auras.
I like it. All right.
Hashtag beard auras. I'm going to have to use that one. Hang on.
So I did want to take a few minutes. Sorry, guys. I know we get distracted easily. This is a good thing.
Squirrel!
Beard auras, exactly. Lots of squirrels. But let's talk about SharePoint 2016 and all the exciting things that we saw. The first thing I think, from my perspective, is just the idea that we've had now for a few months now, we've been aware of it in the SharePoint space, is the idea that we might not have to migrate all of our content. Right, and so I wanted to talk about that first before we get into all the new and exciting stuff that we can do with SharePoint 2016 and OneDrive, but really thinking about what does it mean, the fact that we can now have hybrid search that's basically able to extend back into your SharePoint 2010 content databases, even your SharePoint 2013 content databases, and then be able to take those hybrid results and surface them up in different portals. And it doesn't matter if those portals are out in the cloud or actually on-prem, but if you have that kind of hybrid environment, just those possibilities. So I think it's really interesting to talk about maybe what you could do with that budget if you didn't migrate the content and you instead applied hybrid search, or whether you think that migrating content is still going to be a big option for different folks. So Christian, want to share some thoughts about that?
Well, I don't know that it's necessarily just because of that capability or reason not to migrate. There are a lot of other aspects to that, and I'm sure we'll hear opinions from Mark and Jason as well. about that. I'm sure we can't stop that they're going to jump in with their opinions. But it's I think what is great about this this as a strategy is just for an organization to look at where they are, look at the cost of doing that entire migration over, and instead of utilizing the infrastructure that they have in place today, so they can start. It's this idea, and I think it's brilliant from Microsoft, of pulling people towards those cloud experiences versus pushing. You must move to be able to get all the latest, greatest capability. Instead, utilize what you have, leverage what you have today, and be able to have some of those cloud experiences down, leveraging the infrastructure you have in place today. So I think it's about having more options, not necessarily that it's easier yeah, and I'll let Jason and Mark jump in on that, but it makes it technically feasible to use the pieces that you have in place today.
Mm-hmm. Jason?
Jason, Mark.
I'll let Mark go first because I may be have a difference of opinion. So
I was thinking, what opinion could I take that's different than the other three of you? And I think that it's standing in for the end user. And I think what the real benefit of 2016 and a lot of the new announcements on May 4th is that we're going to start seeing end users getting more and more capabilities lit up for them, and this hybrid story is part of it, where they start to see, hopefully, if the guys in the back room like Jason decide to light these things up, we'll have more capability that we can show people that adds real value on top of SharePoint in the normal course of business. They don't actually care where it comes from or where it lives or whether it's cloud connected or any of that stuff. But by bringing some of this capability via the hybrid story into on-premises farms, we're going to be able to give them a lot more capability than they'd seen before. So I think that's exciting. I think that the sort of consumerization of the UI that we're seeing on Office 365 now will start to trickle back into the organization too. And people are going to love that because the user experience has always been a problem with SharePoint.
Jason, I'm going to do trickle down, hashtag trickle down UX is another hashtag.
Yes, it's one I use frequently.
So to me, this is not a new story. This is something I've been talking about since 2010. The idea of being able to leverage a new piece of the infrastructure to unify the world. And I explain this in such a way that I look at this as Microsoft shifting into third, really hitting the on-ramp to that information superhighway that we've been promised for so long. And it's the opportunity for us to not care about where it lives. It gives us that, as the end user of SharePoint, the ability just to do and not to have to worry about it. Let's leave things where they are for now. Let's stand up a minimal infrastructure for 2016. Let's pull things in the right way. Let's leverage search. Let's leverage some of the other features that now get lit up for us through the Office 365 experience and focus on that. And over time, we will mature things into the right places. But it doesn't have to be, we're cutting you over, we're shifting you, we're migrating you. Migration is such a dirty word for users. Users hate to hear that they're being migrated. It gives them the willies. This allows us the ability, rather than having to worry about migration from the user perspective, to leverage the right things in the right way. We get new experiences, and we keep hearing this term come up over and over again of experiences. It's because what Microsoft is focusing on now is let's provide the right infrastructure so that we have the platform moving forward, and then let's roll out the right experience over time, because who's going to cut over right this minute?
Yeah,
I probably would, because I'm a dork that way, and I like to go ahead and build new infrastructures and all that. But for most people, they're not looking to jump right away. And we see this pause happen in the ProServe world, where when we hear there's something new coming, we wait a while, and we then pause for the 6 months before and the 6 months after it. And so there's this year lag. We don't have to deal with that anymore. Go stand it up, go ahead and start taking advantage of these new feature sets that we truly can employ, and it gets us there a lot faster, and it breeds this confidence in users, hopefully, as they see all this new cool stuff that we're bringing to them.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things about the user experience around these technologies as these ginormous projects that happen every 3 years where there's this migration upgrade, right? All that looks like to the end user is it takes resources away from you doing the stuff I actually want in order to go off in IT and do these things that you say are really important but don't mean anything to me. If we can start to, it almost becomes an incremental improvement exercise as opposed to this big migration, big project that takes 2 years kind of thing.
It's a change management activity rather than the migration.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, I think it's going to be good news for everybody across the board, really.
I think that is the element of it. So for me, the biggest issue that we see is just the amount of budget that people allocate to a migration process. And we know how to do that internal to IT, right? It's like, okay, yeah, we've done this before. You know, you did it for 2007, for 2010, and for 2013. Now you suddenly have this option, right? And maybe it's not you, as Jason said, but you have an option now of like, how do I actually deal with this content that I already have and I have this issue? And then how do I actually allocate it to the resources that we want to deliver first? And that's what I think is the most exciting part of it, is like, okay, maybe if I do this kind of hybrid search approach, I actually don't have to even mess with the end user experience right now. I can actually start using the benefits of search and even deploy those results back to my on-prem, right, if I need to. So it's a great way of thinking about, it's a change management project, but it's not this huge implementation anymore. And I think it does set us up for how we're going to manage feature releases in the future as well. Just from some of the announcements we've heard in terms of the feature packs and other things that are coming down the pipe. So it's really thinking about how do I put in a place of basically change readiness, and then being able to use the opportunity to move to SharePoint 2016 in a different way than this sort of, the big, crash sort of implementation that we've often seen in the past. So for me, it's really a very exciting option, and I think it's going to be difficult for IT departments to actually be able to evaluate it just because we're so used to doing it the other way, right? We suddenly now have this other option, and it's like, okay, yeah, you could actually deliver some parts of the organization first, and the people who need the newest functionality first could actually get that, and hybrid search results could be still exposed across the whole organization. So it's kind of amazing to me.
Hey, Naomi, you just brought up a great point. Sorry to interrupt, but about how Microsoft traditionally measured the success of the new release was around the speed at which people migrate to that platform. And now this really could impact that. I mean, I always thought that was a bad metric because isn't it valuable just to have more customers on SharePoint, whatever version it is of that? Yeah, they want to sell the new version of that. But ultimately, especially with the evergreen model around Office 365, and it's going to take some companies a couple years, some a dozen or more years before they are able to make that transition. So looking at that as a measurement of success of like SharePoint 2016 that's out, I think that goes away. I mean, one, because, I guess people moving to Office 365, but now you have, and what's always been true is that when you go and you ask any organization what version of SharePoint they're on, you ask, hey, who's on 2016? It's still in beta, been in beta, not many hands go up. How many on 2013? Bunch of hands. 2010, most hands, including some that had 2013. People are running 2010 and some 2007 and 2016, and they're playing with Office 365. And so those old ways of kind of measuring that. Anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but you understand my point, that what is the measurement now for success of that new model?
Hopefully it moves from, what version are you running to how much do you like what you've got, and who cares what version it is? I mean, the end users never cared anyway. And I at conferences ask the same question because it helps to sort of know what the crowd is like. But that part shouldn't matter. It should be, is it satisfying your business needs? Are you finding these tools useful? And if we can give them better tools faster, not just for the sake of giving them to them, but because they actually address some sort of need, I think everybody wins.
Well, three of us went to the event. One of us made a mistake in not attending. Just the thing that struck me most about the Future of SharePoint event, and you can go back and listen to it, it's available on demand. How many times did you hear them talk about SharePoint Online versus SharePoint On-Prem? It was very few. They simply used the word SharePoint. flipping back and forth between the features that are available on-prem versus in Office 365, because the intention is to roll all of this that they can back to on-prem. It doesn't matter anymore. They're looking at it as a singular thing. It is SharePoint. We are SharePoint. That's all it is. It's not version versus version. That's their goal, is for it to be about the end user experience, about the features that you use and that you leverage, and that's it.
Out here in the cheap seats, there was a lot of talk about, well, they didn't say anything about on-prem. They didn't say anything about on-prem. Well,
took it right at the beginning, but yeah.
But they really didn't, and I think Jason's right. They were talking about SharePoint. They weren't necessarily talking about one or the other, though there were some differences in what they were showing us, about how fast it's going to be on-prem. But they seem to be blurring those lines, and I again think that's great for everybody.
Okay, so I think it'd be great, since we've talked a little bit about the future of SharePoint Events and all the great stuff that was mentioned there, maybe we could talk a little bit about our favorite features and some of the new things that we've seen, both from an IT pro perspective as well as an end user perspective. So just to kick us off, the couple of things that I'm most excited about, and it's a little esoteric perhaps for me. One is this idea of the intelligent intranet. And so seeing things like the Delve recommendations and sort of that discovery experience being put into OneDrive. So basically, as you're navigating in OneDrive, you can actually see some recommended files that are associated in SharePoint. And so just having that contextual recommendation in there, that's a very helpful and great direction, I think. And then the other favorite thing that I have is the native app support for Power Apps now. And so just having that functionality, so the ability to allow end users to create mobile applications based on data sources both within SharePoint and across the whole enterprise, and even with the power of Microsoft Flow, the ability to take in workflow options, maybe even from external sources like Salesforce and Twitter and other parts of it. So just seeing those two things allowed me to really see this idea of this intelligent intranet and seeing the tools that people will actually be working on. And it's kind of SharePoint's really elevating up to be that platform for business process, even more so than the content and the conversations that we focused on in the past. So Jason, maybe talk about some of your favorite things that you saw announced.
Some of my favorite things I saw announced, I'm excited about the app, the new mobile app for SharePoint. I wasn't at first. I'll be honest with you. It was like another app. Why do I care? It really wasn't all that exciting. I saw a couple of previews of it, just didn't get me all hot and bothered. And then I got a little bit more access to it. I saw it on the day, and I've gotten in and started playing with it a little bit. It truly is a dynamic tool that I will actually use. And beyond that, the new feature functionality you're getting in the OneDrive app as well. I'm not a big fan of the intranet in your pocket reference that they kept making over and over and over.
I know. I was like, who has pockets? It's in your hand, right? I don't. Yeah. It's like.
It was much better than you saw that first one. I kind of poked fun at it while it happened, but it was like we can dream together kind of. Did you catch that statement, Mark? Did you see that?
No, luckily, some of that stuff was filtered out for those of us.
Okay. Yeah, I think they had the kill button. I tweeted it out as it happened. I mean, I do like the whole untethered messaging. I think that is an appropriate word, but sorry. Yeah. Anyway, Jason.
There were plenty of things that were exciting. Some of the new stuff that is still yet to come, and the fast site provisioning capability, and the fact that you can have a little bit more governance around that. The thing that's honestly the biggest for me, it's not there yet, so I'm trying not to talk about it nearly as much, is the new feature packs, and the fact that if you have SA on-prem, they're going to be delivering all of these new features to you, not until 2017. So it's kind of, inhibiting my exuberance on it. But the fact that they're going to continue to deliver more and more to Office 365, and that they're looking at it and how do we package this up and bring it back to on-prem without having to go do a serious, massive upgrade. The idea of feature packs is truly exciting. You have to have software assurance in order to leverage it. Working for a hosting company where, SA is a part of the SPLA license, that's exciting for me. It's really cool. And the other thing that I really liked that they didn't talk about on the live show and, in the live experience, but Bill Baer talked about it in one of the recorded videos, was the fact that they've heard the IT pro pain of MinRoll takes too many servers, and that they're investigating it and they're trying to figure out how to reduce the number of servers to make MinRoll a real thing. That's huge. The fact that Microsoft is listening to that to me really rang true to this whole thing I've been saying for a long time. They're really listening, folks. They really are. Product hasn't even come out yet. They've already heard the message that, man, 11 servers when you include SQL is just way too many. It's a really great thing that they're listening. So that, for me, those two things, they're on-prem things that are future looking. They're not there yet, but the fact that they're focused on them means that our future is bright again. And that to me is really exciting.
Hey, I have to say that when Office 365 went live back in, the early version, so pre-BPOS with MMS, where that server footprint of 11, boy, we looked forward to that day when we could reduce that footprint to 11 servers. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, Mark.
That's all right. I have sort of a devil's advocate question. We've always had people wait for the first service update, or what is it called? Service pack. Those things.
Yeah,
SP1.
We all wait for the first service pack.
Right. Yeah. Before they would either even think about upgrading, and then service pack would come out, and there'd be problems with it, and blah, 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 blah. So one of the things that I wonder about is, are they going to be able to do this feature pack thing better? Because they cannot. If they have the first service pack come out and it breaks something, we're right back where we were. Mm-hmm. And, I've got fingers and toes crossed, but the track record here has not been fantastic. So, Jason, as somebody who has to manage all of these patches and updates and things like that, how do you feel like they're going to do a better job this time?
Lots of cumulative updates.
I'm supremely hopeful. I'm supremely hopeful, first of all. The fact they've reduced the number of MSIs and MSPs that they deploy as a part of these updates is really important. It means there's a smaller payload. The fact that everything gets installed on every server, that's a huge one as well. Now, keep in mind, 11 servers is required for high availability, zero downtime patching MinRoll. You can install using MinRoll in a much more minimalistic way. You don't have to have all of the roles. You don't have to go the whole route. Go out and read all of the guidance about that. I talk about the 11 servers that are required because, as an infrastructure guy, as an IT pro, I want the high availability. For me, business critical means I have to be up. But as far as the service pack thing, Microsoft in the olden days, and I'm old enough to remember when you would patch NT4 and you would destroy the server, you may as well just build a new one.
Wow, that's way back there. Yeah.
Anything odd numbered was bad. All service packs, you would just you don't want to go there. So it's for me, we've reduced that pain quite a bit over the course of time. So I feel more confident in service packs these days. I still like to let them lag a good 14 to 30 days until my colleague Todd Clint has gone through and actually done all the hard work. And then I can leverage what he's done and make sure, all the regressions that come into his blog, I minimize and get to deal with less. But I believe that the intentions here are to roll out net new features while still leaving the old methods in place. So what we had as a big problem before was replacing DLLs. Instead of versioning DLLs and moving forward, and the way that they're doing it in Office 365, the way they're doing it in Azure now is actually versioning and moving forward. So we don't replace, we aren't wiping out and rebuilding, we're improving upon it. Same way that SQL has been doing for a long time. We haven't had SQL issues with service packs in a very long time. And I think that following that methodology, Azure has followed that methodology after AWS did it. And now that the SQL does it and Azure does it, I think that the SharePoint team is looking to that and has a good handle on it. So
good. I mean, I think they're going to have to convince a lot of the market about that. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, I think that story is definitely a better one. So it's good to hear you outline it like that.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the end user improvements too. So we saw a few things out there. We've obviously seen there's been some testing in Office 365 recently, things like the new document library previews, which is very interesting, and you've seen Microsoft take that feedback on board. But from an end user perspective, what were some of the highlights for you? Again, I like the surfacing up of Delve recommendations in different places. I also liked it on the mobile experience where you're actually seeing some of those following and other actions that are actually useful and being populated quickly for you as part of the team site structures that are there. So any other favorites from an end user perspective?
Yeah, something that it was on my top of my list was the alignment of the document libraries, as you mentioned, with the OneDrive for Business experience. I mean, this is one of those things that I've said this last week on the Collab 365 event, and in blog posts there'll be much more content out there about this. But there's always that question of why is it that business systems operate so differently than the end user productivity solutions, the Microsoft Office suite? Why can't we look and leverage what's done well over in Office over within these business solutions? And so as much as these can kind of come together. So I think some people look at it and say, well, hey, some of the SharePoint experience, it looks like it's going the same direction as OneDrive for Business, and there's pros and cons to that. But I think from an end user perspective, it's what's familiar and what we expect. I expect to right click on a file and take an action versus I can do that on my desktop, but in SharePoint, I'm going up and trying to find it within a ribbon. So tying in those kinds of experiences. But then there's other things that I like. Being able to access list data and being able to use that as a data source to be able to go and build more intelligence into what I'm building. So I look at this as, all of some of the most successful topics of speakers that are out, at SP TechCon and the IT Unity events and all those are around leveraging that list data and being creative and being able to draw out that data. Now it just becomes a data source that I can point to and pull from, inside or outside of the application. That's really powerful. It's now we're really beginning to see what we've talked about for a few years now of being able to consume SharePoint, the various services that comprise SharePoint, be able to pull those out and really from that citizen developer standpoint, leverage the data where it is, which kind of brings us back to that migration discussion. The fact that and I use the example of, I don't know when the last time your organization reorged and what happened to your SharePoint sites because of that. And it less becomes now, hey, we need to go and shuffle all these sites around, to that data source. It's still valid, it's still there, and now it can be accessed from different locations just as that content database, that data source. So it's just a lot more flexibility for end users to go and get the data where it exists and put together a solution, build a page based on that data. I think it's just makes SharePoint much more usable.
Interestingly enough, I mean, we've been able to do that since forever. It's just that people haven't been doing it. Now Microsoft is starting to build those unified experiences like the new SharePoint homepage, which is pulling data from all over the place. When a lot of us have been working on intranets over the years, we've tried to convince people that you don't edit stuff on the homepage of an intranet. It all bubbles up from somewhere else because it's all about important activity. And now Microsoft has actually built a page like that. And we'll see how people take to it. But I think that kind of thinking is very good. It's part of that sort of consumerization of the UI I talked about earlier, where I think we're seeing something that for small and medium-sized businesses is absolutely a no-brainer. I don't want to build anything. That's perfect. As you get into the bigger enterprise kind of customers, they all think that they want everything to look custom and different. So I think there it will play less. But I think it's going to be great stuff for most of the smaller companies that I think, again, as I've said many times, is a sweet spot for Office 365. It's becomes a commodity thing almost, and why not use it? It's better than the other stuff.
Are you excited about the pages as well, Mark? I would imagine he's got the team site owners, obviously, who are then able to give other folks the ability to create pages and then a much more rich authoring experience. Yeah,
I think that new authoring experience with the new pages with that canvas on them is going to, again, make a lot of people happy, and then a lot of other people not happy.
Right.
And as long as there's an option, I think it's great. The real publishing model is still something that a lot of people use, and they're not going to want to give up. But just to get some content out there fast and have it look decent, where it's not a heavy corporate branding police kind of thing, it's a beautiful experience. It's so seamless. We talk a lot in user experience about making things frictionless. If you can just create a page and be done editing it, the hard part's actually generating the content instead of making the content look good. Mm-hmm. That's a big switch, right? Because the content is actually the hard part. It ought to be the hard part, not publishing it. So I think the new page model is going to be a nice breath of fresh air for a lot of people. We've seen it in the Delve blog interface for a little while now, so people should be familiar with what that looks like. I think that's going to be a very popular thing.
So from the devil's advocate perspective, if I can pretend to be Mark here for a second, so you remember where a lot of organizations that were not happy with the whole my site proliferation and the ability just to go and build subsites off of the my site, things that were kind of outside of the purview of IT, if there were maybe a provisioning process for team sites, for example. People would just go and build those. I mean, do you, so I'm kind of asking the question, of whether you see this ability for people just to go out and create these pages and content, which I think is fantastic. And some organizations may have a problem with a lot of this content being created in spaces that are not approved, that are not the right place, that conversations happening, which really should be over within the formal team site, and that whole discussion all over again.
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting debate. I think that it all comes back to governance and being able to support different governance models. We can't ever look at these platforms as, one size fits all kind of solutions. I mean, I have clients all over the map from a governance perspective. Everything from we don't care what anyone does to nobody can publish anything unless it's signed off by legal. And the platform can support all of that, but when you put something like the new SharePoint homepage out there, it can't work for everybody. So I think we'll see how how that percolates through.
Yeah, I'll give an example. My friend here, he works for MI6. That really wouldn't work as well there.
Not as well.
It's just frowned upon a little bit. You don't want to say how many kills you have on a page and stuff. But I want to throw out an alternative here, a theory. Crossman here in the chat is asking if anybody's had a positive experience with the authoring canvas. And forgive me, Crossman, I don't know if you're male or female, so I'm just going to use the term.
Yeah.
Kevin.
There we go. So Kevin's asking and saying he's only heard negative. I think that this is more of truly an end user experience, that the people who jumped into this early are the people who are going to be trying to put some scripts in there, and they're trying to do more with it, and they're going to find that they can't do, because it's really designed very much for an end user to go in and put content in specifically. So I don't know that we've had enough. I certainly haven't heard anything yet, because my end users haven't, that group of end users who are purely looking for the end user content play haven't gotten there. It's the less tech savvy folks.
I think Kevin just dropped the other shoe right there. He said that his end users are admittedly a bunch of tech savvy engineers. Yeah. So as soon as you want to sort of, make it do this other weird thing, that canvas is not going to work for you. It's not designed for that kind of an audience. It's designed for people who want to focus on the content and get it out there. And I think that we sort of have lost that. A lot of organizations have made the publishing process so complex that they've forgotten that the content needs to say something. There's this huge effort to make the process really good, and then the content's garbage. So, I think it's going to really help with that part.
I ran some really nice servers. They're great. They're great. Just don't try and put anything on them. They're perfect. Do not put anything on them, please.
Well, if you put something on them, somebody might read it. So
that's another example, Jason, of where end users just get in the way of any real progress.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a picnic
Being an
problem.
admin would be perfect if it wasn't for all the end users.
Exactly. It's a picnic problem. So the problem in chair, not in computer, right? So I think that's the issue. And so, yeah, I've seen that feedback a little bit from an end user perspective too. So I do think it's, a structured canvas. It's that medium type of experience, right? It's sort of trying to make it simple for people to contribute content. And I think it is very successful in that way. The issue is if then, yes, you have end users that are more sophisticated, then challenging them with a structure that's already predefined can be difficult. But I do think it's an interesting take because we've seen the gravitation has been away from actually putting the content itself in a SharePoint mechanism. It's been, put the content in Word and then store it in OneDrive or SharePoint or whether use some other authoring experience. So I find that it's very interesting that now we're building content back into the platform itself and storing it there, as opposed to, we're in some separate application for authoring. And I do think it brings us back to the search question, because I do think search is vastly improved, right, from a SharePoint and OneDrive and overall Office 365 tenant. And I know we've talked about this on CollabTalk a lot before in terms of, does it really matter where the content is stored so long as search is able to surface it up? We want to have these serendipitous occasions inside of our organization. We want to have discovery experiences where we find a team that's working on other things that could be useful to us, obviously with privacy and all those things in place. But I do think this new page model of people being able to just put some content out there and then not worrying about whether it's in Word or Excel or anything else, right? They're just putting their content out there and then being able to share that with a wider group. And then having recommendations helping you surface up that content that could be useful to you. So I think it's part of that vision, and really helping end users to find stuff that could be useful that they're just not aware of. So I'm excited.
I worked with a guy back in the mid-90s, a guy named Mark Moore, who unfortunately has been working at IBM for a long time. So he lost his way. But he was the first person I ever heard say, there is no there. The content is somewhere. You don't care where it is, as long as you can find it and it shows up when you need it. It was all about knowledge management back then, and that was the context of the conversation. But that conversation is the same. It's, we're generating petabytes of content, and we still can't figure out what the benefits are for my job, or I can't find out how do I request paid time off, or whatever it is I need to do. The actual crap I need is still hard to find. Yeah. And if we don't worry so much about where it's stored and just make sure it gets put in front of people at the right time, we've solved the problem. It's not the storage thing that's been broken. It's the how does it show up in front of me at the right time?
So look, and some may disagree with me, but I'm going to get on my soapbox about the power of social collaboration to do exactly what you said. You can have as much intelligence as you want, in the system, but even Office Graph relies on those social interactions to be able to add that context, add the relevance to do exactly what you're saying. If you are not, so there's multiple layers there, of course. Taxonomy, metadata strategy is still important. That doesn't go away. You need to have people that are interacting and have access to these libraries of content. People need to be in there. They need to be following each other. They need to be interacting so that it is relevant. They see some content that's not tagged properly. They need to be adding that folksonomy to add that context, interacting with the content, sharing it out, sharing it to other groups. The more that we do that and change the culture in our organizations around the way that we interact with that content, we're going to solve that problem. Yes, we need to have the Office Graph and this machine learning, this intelligence, this automation that's doing that, but we have to do the other half of that. We have to be interacting with the content and sharing it. I don't think that and I'll get off my soapbox, I don't think the volume of content that's being created is a relevant discussion. There's only going to be an increase in the volume of content. We need to get better about the filters that we have that we pull down, about the interactions that we have to make sure that we have relevant filters turned on, that we're following people that are relevant to what it is that we're doing, the teams that we're working on, the projects, the keywords that we need to follow. And we need to be having those social interactions. And what is it? Wax. It's the whack soapbox. All right, I'm done.
Thanks for that interaction, Christian.
Yeah.
And that's now in our social graph.
There you go.
All right, maybe we should transition from our end user model and talk about some of the developer updates in the SharePoint framework would be really good. So I wondered, Mark, perhaps you'd like to talk to us a little bit about the pages and parts model and talk a little bit about what's changed.
Well, it strikes me that out of the four of us, I may be the only one who actually directly cares about that new framework.
No,
I think
I don't care.
directly, right? I was a little disappointed in the May 4th event because they didn't say much, and I think that's the reason for that is where they are in the process. But I've seen early versions of the new SharePoint framework, which didn't have a name when I saw it, and I think it's going to be an excellent new development experience. It's an option. It's not a replacement for all of the old development experiences. I know that people don't believe that, and it's the fourth one in 4 versions or the 5th one or whatever, but it really is another option beyond what you can do with the app model or add-in model. So that's one important point. The other important point is I think we've been talking a lot about user experience, and I think that it really starts to give credence to the fact that you can give people a better user experience by building on the client, because it's right there where the user is. So this new SharePoint framework is going to give us, sort of official sanctioned SharePoint, Microsoft is using it tooling that will allow us to bring those user experiences to the client side and make them much more sort of modern. The real word, not the one that they've ruined for me, the real word modern and what people are seeing on the external web. So that's exciting to me. I think that the fact that the SharePoint product group is going to be building, and in fact already is building stuff on top of that SharePoint framework, and these new experiences that we're seeing, things like the SharePoint homepage, the new document library, what do we call that? Document library page. Mm-hmm. Those things are built using the rudiments of what the SharePoint framework is giving us. So you can already see what kinds of things you can do. So that user experience thing I think is huge. The other piece of it is it brings development on top of SharePoint straight into modern web development. We've for years had to get these people who are willing to come from web development and sort of check their souls at the door so that they can work with SharePoint. It's like, no, not SharePoint, and then they sort of are cowed into submission. We can have them come in now and use all the modern tools that they think are fantastic that people have been using in web development for years, all of these great development frameworks, and they just work with the SharePoint framework. So SharePoint becomes a service, as it has been for years for people like me. And we can build whatever we want on top of it. And again, the framework sort of makes that legitimate. So I'm very excited about it. I think that giving people a better option as opposed to all the crap that I write about and we find people doing on Stack Exchange and things like that, and making this an official way to go about things is going to be a new age, a new era in development for SharePoint.
And this is what you and your bacon-loving compatriot, by the way, I think they should call it SB Bacon, Mark Rackley have been preaching for a very long time. And I'm an IT pro. The development story doesn't really excite me generally, but the thing that
you like it when I get off your servers, right?
Exactly, I love that. But we've been doing that for a bit. But what really struck me about the new development model was the shouting and the soapboxing that was going on more of the SharePoint senior development in community leaders talking about it. And it was a lot of shouting on the day of. And then you go back and you read everybody's blog and you listen to some of the podcasts that are out there, and you realize that the noise that they're making is not all that negative. Because when you read some of the tweets and some of the things, it was a pretty negative kind of feel to it at the beginning. And I did a lot of sentiment analysis around Twitter on the day of. It felt rather harsh, but the feel of what all of the development people that I've talked with since has been is it is iterative. You're not taking anything away from me that I can't do the old methods. Hopefully we're improving and we're not doing some of those older things. But instead, we're doing exactly what I talked about earlier with what SharePoint Online is doing, where Azure's gone. We're giving another method, another opportunity to do better, to do more. And I think that's an improvement. And it's off my server, so I'm a happy guy.
I think the most exciting thing that I heard from a dev perspective, I mean, we are an ISV, so the dev model impacts us, unilaterally. But from my perspective, thinking about my enterprise clients and some of the other customers that I serve, the ability to have some backwards compatibility. This is one of the things that makes Microsoft an enterprise structured company, right, versus others. And so having some backward compatibility in terms of, okay, I could think about how I would architect something for SharePoint 2016, but I might actually have some real effect right now with the development work that I'm doing. So that for me was very exciting in terms of, okay, look at what you're coding right now, look at the stuff that you're custom building, and then think backwards a little bit, from a migration perspective, where you're going to go, maybe when you're going to adopt SharePoint 2016, and then perhaps, have some of those options in there. So for me, that was very exciting, I thought, from a customer perspective. And the other aspect of it was just, the ability to use all these other different languages. I'm so excited from just the whole acquisition of Xamarin and just the ability to have some of this stuff in there. Just thinking about, okay, I can actually use real web technologies, normal web technologies, not stuff that my 25-year-old developers go, oh my God, SharePoint, because they do, right? So from my perspective, it's really, really exciting. So I'm very heartened by the changes, and I realize that change is difficult, and the skill sets are difficult to evolve.
But it also just easily solves some problems that everybody wants solved. The new page model is responsive out of the gate. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to use any of these third-party or open source, bootstraps. Not that those don't work, but you sort of don't have to go through that step. The other thing is, I think, for all the companies who have been over the years investing in client-side development, that same stuff can be used in this framework. So, some of the citizen development stuff that's out there, which I'm a huge fan of, these are the people who really make the platform popular, is, the people who build the stuff that real people want. Not that IT never does that, but sometimes they don't. A lot of the stuff that they've done can move into this new model and still be useful. So you talked about preserving the investment. I think a lot of the investment of people who have been working in the client side over the years is still going to be, you're going to have to do a little conversion, but it's not going to be a huge deal. So I think that's a great thing. But anyways, I'm not just an instant optimist about anything I see anywhere at all. The flowers are blooming. It's spring. There's a brown one over there. God damn it! So the fact that I got as excited about this new SharePoint framework as I have, having seen it working in the dev kitchen, seeing where they're going, seeing the fact that they're going to be using, the product group is going to be using it themselves, to me says this is a whole different story than what we've seen before.
And for those in the audience that aren't as familiar with Mark, he's kind of the Labrador Retriever of response to everything. So he is. This is the same that he looks when he's devastated by something. It's just all the same look.
So real quick, Mark, I think it was Sandra asked the question: how does what got announced impact SharePoint Addins? How are they used much, and do they survive updates okay? Having done a little bit with them, I think they're just fine. It's just again, we're just adding another set of methods to be able to do stuff. SharePoint add-in model was rather minimal, in its development skill requirement. I built some SharePoint add-ins. Now that I've thrown away my dev hat, those times are over. But that was my take. Mark, I don't know if you want to comment.
That model is very much alive and kicking. They're not taking that away in any shape or form. The new SharePoint framework allows you to do a lot of really good work, but there are times when an app just makes more, or admin, or what are they called now? Bob. Add-ins, they're the right answer in a lot of cases. So you still need to make architectural decisions. One of the things that add-ins let you do is move a large portion of your processing off somewhere else, not the client, somewhere else. And when you need that sort of arbiter or middle tier or whatever it is you need to call it for the architecture you're building, that's the right answer. So the add-in model is alive and kicking. The sandbox model is there and deprecated, but still an option. So you still have a wide range of potential ways to build things, and you need to figure out what the right answer, as you should have been doing all along. Just because there's a new way to do something, it doesn't mean it's the right way to do everything. People have often talked to me about, well, you should just build everything client side, right? And it's like, no, what are you, insane? I mean, servers have tremendous amounts of power. That's why they exist. And desktops may not. So depending on what you want to do, it can be a really bad idea. So we always have to be thinking about how we balance the load, how we architect solutions, and which one of these development models makes sense in any given circumstance. It's just like when people say, which development framework should I use, Angular or React or Knockout? That's not the question. It's what are you trying to do, and what's the best way to do it? And now with this additional option on the SharePoint development side of things, we have another thing to think about as an option.
I think that's a great transition to our last topic, really, in the next 5 minutes or so, is just to talk a little bit about the vision of intranet. We heard a lot during the Future of SharePoint event in terms of the talk about the intelligent intranet and building that sort of digital workplace of the future. And I think, we saw the changes with the SharePoint tile. Woo! No more sites, just the SharePoint tile, right? And the SharePoint homepage. But I think there's a lot more that folks can do. I know that in Nashville this weekend, Jeff Teeper was kind enough to come to SharePoint Saturday Nashville and answered some questions from the audience. It was a great time. And he explained that some of the things that they're working on is actually looking at some of the common things like branding, common issues that people often do to try to sort of personalize SharePoint and roll those out as a potential sort of feature pack for the future. So I wanted to talk just the last couple of minutes in terms of what do you see the vision of the intranet changing to? Do you see something different now? We have a different version or a different mindset perhaps around SharePoint, or is it more about business process, or is it just the same it's always been? So Christian, maybe you want to share some thoughts on that?
Well, so I don't know. Well, there's a lot in there, and to cover in 5 minutes. I don't know that it necessarily changes how organizations approach or how they envision SharePoint when they first kind of went down that path. Whether or not if it's devolved like it has for a lot of organizations into simple document collaboration, and then they end up going and doing those kind of intranet-centric collaborative experiences elsewhere. SharePoint is, to my company's perspective is that, SharePoint still remains it's the most fertile ground out there for enterprise collaboration. It is the natural place to go, we feel, to go and build an intranet solution. I think then people have gotten hung up on the various weaknesses SharePoint has had with the end user experience. So I think we're going to see SharePoint beginning to live up to the promise of those organizations that had that intention of going and building out an intranet. Without going in depth into some of those areas, I don't know at a high level if Mark or Jason, you have other thoughts on that.
I have a thought, and it's less specific as it is optimistic, and I'm kind of playing the rosy optimist right now since I'm stuck with Mark here, because he's always such a good devil's advocate guy. I'm thoroughly encouraged by the fact that the SharePoint team is focused on the intranet. It's not, we want to be all things to all people and everywhere and do all of these things anymore. We're going to let Power BI be Power BI. We're going to let this be that. We're going to make sure that the Office online suite is going to do that thing. We're going to focus, for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, on the intranet. That's where we're going to focus all of our energy, or most of our energies, and really make it SharePoint the intranet solution. And for me, that's really encouraging to see them take their considerable brain pan and point it at a thing and really tackle it and let us know this is what we're looking at. This is what we're focused on. Microsoft as a whole is doing a lot more, but this is the thing that we're going to focus on for now, and we're going to make this the best out there. That to me is huge. There are lots of other parts of Microsoft that are doing lots of other things, trying to bring big parts to this table that are going to show up in Office 365. But SharePoint, going back to the brand of SharePoint and it being that central tab and having a homepage that really is the center of your world, and it no longer being, well, we're going to strip it out, we're going to sell it off for parts. It's the core, and it's where we're going to spend our time, and it's going to be the intranet. To me, that's really exciting, and I'm thrilled by the future for it. So,
Mark, come on, gonna have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, which way should I go with this? I only have like 30 seconds. I think I agree with you, Jason. I went to a conference over in Copenhagen a couple months ago just about intranets. It wasn't about SharePoint. It was sort of a nice fresh breath of fresh air. And just seeing what people wanted to do with intranets, and we're heading toward at that conference, is really well aligned with where the product group out in Redmond is going. I actually think that they're at least a few years ahead of where people actually are in building their intranets. I think that they're leading the market as opposed to just trying to build some stuff that their biggest clients are asking for. And that's a really different approach. And I think that some of the directions that they're taking with sort of the Naomi, the machine learning and getting stuff in front of me that I don't realize I need in front of me. That kind of activity where you don't publish stuff on your intranet homepage. It just gets there because it's the right stuff and the engine knows what to do. I think that that's a huge step forward that a lot of organizations are going to have to grow into. In the same way that we had to grow into the intranet and as a concept and originally over binders full of paper. We still have people who actually build intranets thinking that way. And, so we've got leaders and laggers, and we're going to have to help people sort of go along for the ride with this, especially if they're using Office 365 and the evolution is quick and full featured. So I agree with your optimism. I hate to have to say that, but I agree with your optimism about it.
I know you don't like agreeing with me, Mark. It's okay.
No, it's not the agreeing with you. I'll agree with you any day. It's just it's this optimism thing I'm struggling with. But yeah, I think the intranet story is going to just keep getting better on top of Office 365 and SharePoint 2016 or whatever your flavor or mix is.
Right. And I just wanted to end very quickly because I know we have 1 minute left. There was a question about Yammer, so I feel I have to address that. Of course. So we didn't hear a lot about Yammer during the Future of SharePoint event, and that was the focus was on SharePoint as the platform. There are a lot of other cool things coming down the pipe. It's the only way I can say it because we're all under NDA on this stuff. But there's a lot of Yammer integration that you're going to see. Some of the stuff that we've been waiting for the longest time ever with SharePoint is really coming. So I think maybe by the fall kind of time scale, you're going to see the integration that we've wanted for a long time with Yammer. Office 365 groups, of course, you can pick your conversation experience between Yammer and Outlook groups. So you'll have both the shared notebook, the team site, all the other great features of an Office 365 group, as well as Yammer conversations being an option there too. So there's a lot of cool stuff. So yeah, it's no die yam or die. Sorry, you're a little late on that, Mark. So anyway, I wanted to wrap this up. So thank you so much. I really appreciate our panel. And thank you so much, Jason, for joining us as a wonderful guest. And we will have another Collab Talk next month. So please register for that. We're thinking it's June 14th, but we'll be happy to have these conversations. And always appreciate you carrying on the conversation out on Twitter at #CollabTalk. And please register for the next one on IT Unity. Definitely appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
And feel free to register for the Bifocal podcast too, which is on Thursday, May 19th at 8 p.m. London time.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and a fun hour of information there. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and to let everybody know that today's webinar episode has been recorded and will be made available later today by coming back to the URL http://itunity.com/CollabTalk for all your CollabTalk news now, and also you can find previous recorded sessions at that location as well. So our next CollabTalk will be held on the 14th of June, the same bat channel, same bat station. So we hope to see you all there, and have a great month until then. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your help. Thanks for everything. Take care.
Simon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.